The Galactic Council had always looked down upon humanity. To them, Earth was nothing more than a primitive world, a backwater planet that had no real significance in the grand scheme of the universe. The humans had been allowed to exist, but only under strict regulations, their technological progress monitored, their expansions restricted. The Council believed that if humanity ever grew too ambitious, they could be crushed with ease. And then the attack happened. The official reports would later claim it was a misunderstanding, a tragic mistake made during a routine military exercise. But the truth was clear. The aliens had slaughtered millions. Earth's outer colonies, the ones closest to the Galactic Council's borders, had been reduced to nothing more than scorched wastelands. Entire cities had been burned to the ground. Families had been wiped out. Ships carrying refugees had been shot down without mercy. It was not a mistake. It was a message, a warning. For years, humanity had believed in peace. The United Terran Council had followed every law, every demand, every humiliating treaty the Galactic Council had imposed upon them. But this time, there would be no diplomatic response, no pleading for justice. There was nothing left to negotiate. Inside the underground war room on Earth, a heavy silence filled the air. Holographic displays showed the destruction of the colonies, images of lifeless bodies floating in space, of children who had never even learned to fear war now reduced to nothing but dust. The leaders of humanity stood in a circle, their faces hardened, their eyes filled with something that had been missing for too long: rage. General Adrian Cole, a man who had once believed that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt, clenched his fists. His voice, when he spoke, was cold and sharp. "They think we'll beg." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of admirals, intelligence officers, and war strategists. "They think we'll submit like we always have." He turned to the president of Earth's Council, a woman who had spent her career trying to maintain peace. "Madam President, with all due respect, we cannot afford to show weakness anymore." President Evelyn Carter had spent decades negotiating with the Council, trying to find a way for humanity to exist without war. She had watched as humans were treated like second-class beings, forced to bow to alien empires that saw them as little more than pests. And now, they had killed her people. Her voice was quiet, but unshakable. "Then we do what must be done." Admiral Vance, head of the Terran fleet, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "They won't expect us to fight back," he said. "They believe we're too weak, too afraid." "They are wrong," Carter replied. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, hidden from alien spies, the true strength of humanity had been growing. For years, Terran scientists had worked in secret, pushing the limits of technology, developing weapons that defied the very laws the Council had forced upon them. Humanity had not been idle. They had been preparing. "Operation Phoenix is ready," said Director Marcus Hale, the head of Terran intelligence. "Our fleets have been upgraded. Our ground forces have been training in simulated combat against every alien strategy we've analyzed." His expression darkened. "We never wanted war, but they've already declared it." General Cole looked at him. "Then we give them more." Across Earth's military bases, soldiers were mobilized. Pilots were called to their stations. Warships that had been hidden beneath the ice of Europa and Titan now emerged, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant suns. The largest human fleet ever assembled began to move, its destination clear. The Galactic Council believed humanity would kneel. But humanity was done kneeling. On the other side of the galaxy, the alien officials who had ordered the attacks sat in their luxurious palaces, confident that humanity would do nothing. They had watched humans bend for centuries, giving up their pride, their autonomy, their right to expand among the stars. They had not expected retaliation. Then, one by one, their border stations went dark. The first attack came without warning. A Council-controlled space station, armed with planetary defense cannons and patrolled by elite alien warriors, was obliterated in a single strike. Surveillance footage, later recovered by panicked Council forces, showed something impossible. Human warships, faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything they had ever encountered. On the bridge of the lead human battleship, General Cole stood with his officers. The enemy fleet had scrambled to respond, their ships moving into defensive formations, but they were too slow. The new human weapons tore through their shields like paper, their armor cracking under relentless fire. Cole's second-in-command, Captain Reyes, watched the destruction unfold on the display screens. "They're in shock," she said. "They thought we were weak," Cole replied. "Let's make sure they never make that mistake again." For the first time in galactic history, the Council was afraid. They had underestimated humanity for too long, and now they would pay the price. This was not just war. This was vengeance. 2 seconds. The Galactic Council's nightmare had only just begun. In the aftermath of their failed attempts to suppress humanity, panic spread across their core worlds like wildfire. The species that had once been dismissed as insignificant had now become an unstoppable force, tearing through their defenses with a vengeance that no one had predicted. And yet, the Council still refused to believe the full extent of their mistake. They clung to the illusion that they could still contain the threat, still force humanity back into submission. But humanity had moved beyond mere survival. This was no longer about defense. This was about justice. Aboard the UTS Valkyrie, Captain Rice stood beside General Adrian Cole, her arms crossed as she studied the latest intelligence reports. The holographic display in front of them showed a string of recent victories. Council fleets obliterated, military outposts reduced to ruins, and entire sectors now under human control. "They're still trying to reinforce their borders," Rice observed. "They think they can hold us back." Cole exhaled, shaking his head. "They don't understand what's coming." He turned to his officers, his voice cold and steady. "We're not just here to win battles. We're here to make sure they never threaten us again." The war had changed. Humanity was no longer reacting to attacks. They were leading the charge, dictating the course of battle. Every strike was precise, every assault carefully calculated. They had studied the Council's weaknesses, adapted to their tactics, and now they were using those lessons to tear through their defenses like a storm. As the human fleet prepared for its next assault, the Council scrambled for a response. On the core world of Vortalis Prime, a desperate emergency meeting was underway. High Chancellor Xylon, leader of the Galactic Council, stared at the gathered officials, his yellow eyes filled with barely contained rage. "We were promised that humanity was weak," he hissed, his sharp claws digging into the polished table. "That they would break under pressure." An avian diplomat with dark feathers spoke nervously. "We underestimated them. Their technology should not exist." Xylon slammed his fist down. "How did they advance so quickly? How did they surpass us?" Silence filled the chamber. None of them had an answer. Across the table, Supreme Admiral Korak, the highest-ranking military officer of the Council, leaned forward. His reptilian face was unreadable, but his tone was grim. "We must consider alternative measures," he said slowly. The room fell deathly quiet. Everyone knew what he meant. The Council had long maintained a secret arsenal of weapons deemed too destructive to use in conventional warfare. Weapons that had been built as a last resort in case of an existential threat. Humanity had now become that threat. But even as the Council debated their next move, humanity was already one step ahead. The UTS Valkyrie led a fleet of warships deeper into enemy territory, targeting one of the Council's primary supply hubs. The alien forces stationed there had been given strict orders to hold their ground. Reinforcements were on the way. They never arrived. Humanity struck with overwhelming force. Stealth ships infiltrated the enemy's perimeter, disabling critical defense systems before the main attack even began. The first wave of missiles tore through orbital platforms, sending debris cascading into the atmosphere below. The enemy fleet scrambled to respond, but by the time they realized what was happening, Human warships were already in the heart of their formation. Council officers shouted desperate orders. Their crews fought valiantly, but it was useless. Human weapons ripped through their ships with terrifying precision. Explosions lit up the void, sending shockwaves through what remained of the fleet. On the surface, enemy strongholds were bombarded relentlessly. The Council's forces attempted to retreat into underground bunkers, but humanity had come prepared. Specialized seismic warheads collapsed entire structures, burying their enemies beneath tons of rubble. By the time the battle ended, the supply hub was no more. General Cole stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, watching as the fires on the surface burned. There was no satisfaction in his expression, only cold determination. This was their last major supply line in the sector, Captain Rice said. They'll be starving their own fleets just to keep fighting. Cole nodded. Then they'll make desperate moves. He turned away from the viewport and addressed the officers around him. We're not stopping. We push forward. No one hesitated. Humanity had been forced to the edge. Now it was their turn to strike back. The Council's desperation was beginning to show. With every battle lost, their grip on the galaxy weakened. Planets that had once feared the Council's wrath were now openly rebelling, emboldened by humanity's relentless advance. Once loyal commanders were defecting, abandoning their posts rather than face the wrath of Earth's forces. Yet, the Council still refused to surrender. In a hidden war chamber deep beneath the surface of Vortalis Prime, High Chancellor's Island stood before a gathering of military leaders and strategists. The air was thick with tension. Every defeat had brought them closer to the unthinkable, the end of their reign. This cannot continue, Xylan growled, his claws raking across the surface of the war table. Humanity is carving through our defenses like they were made of paper. How have we fallen so far? A tense silence followed. Then, Admiral Korek spoke. His reptilian features were unreadable, but his voice carried an edge of fear. It is not just their technology, he admitted. It is their will. We have never encountered a species that fights like this. They do not simply seek victory. They seek vengeance. Xylan bared his fangs. Then we give them something they fear. The chamber fell silent. They all knew what he meant. The forbidden weapons, the Council's last resort. For centuries, the Council had outlawed the use of certain weapons, devices so destructive that even the most ruthless conquerors had agreed never to deploy them. Worlds had been wiped out before, civilizations erased from history. But the Council had always held those weapons in reserve, using them only as a deterrent. Now, they would no longer hesitate. Xylan turned to his war council. Deploy the eradication fleets. Wipe humanity from the stars. Orders were given. Fleets mobilized. The last gamble of the Galactic Council had begun. On the bridge of the UTS Valkyrie, General Cole studied the latest intelligence reports. Something had changed. They're moving their fleets erratically, Captain Rice noted. They're not defending strategic points anymore. They're converging on specific targets, civilian targets. Cole's expression darkened. The Council was no longer trying to win a war. They were trying to erase humanity itself. He turned to his officers. Get me Admiral Kasai. Now. Within moments, the holo-display flickered to life, revealing the hardened face of Admiral Ayako Kasai, Supreme Commander of Earth's Navy. She had been overseeing operations from the fleet's command center, coordinating humanity's counteroffensive. Cole, she greeted, wasting no time. What have you found? The Council's no longer fighting a war, he said grimly. They're preparing a massacre. Kasei's eyes narrowed. Explain. Cole relayed the intercepted transmissions, the coded messages hinting at mass deployments, the sudden movement of key Council forces toward human-occupied worlds. It didn't take much to understand what was happening. They're going to glass our colonies, Rice said, her voice tight with anger. They're not even trying to hold territory anymore. They just want to kill as many of us as possible. Kasai exhaled sharply, her expression unreadable. Then she gave the order. Redirect all available forces, she commanded. We intercept them before they reach our people. The battle for humanity's survival began in the skies over New Horizon. The colony was home to over 3 million people, men, women, and children, who had once believed they were safe from war. Now, death loomed above them. The Council's fleet arrived in overwhelming numbers. Their warships positioned themselves in high orbit, their weapons charged and aimed at the surface. The bombardment was about to begin. But humanity was ready. The Valkyrie and a fleet of Earth's warships emerged from slip space in a synchronized assault. Weapons systems locked on. Missiles streaked through the void. Kinetic rounds punched through enemy hulls. Human fighters weaved through the chaos, dodging plasma fire and returning with pinpoint accuracy. The Council's forces, expecting an easy slaughter, found themselves in a brutal close-quarters battle. Their warships, built for intimidation and control, were ill-prepared for the sheer aggression of humanity's tactics. Then, the ground defenses activated. New Horizon had not been left unprotected. The colony's surface-to-orbit cannons roared to life, sending massive railgun rounds into the enemy fleet. Ships exploded in fiery blossoms, their wreckage raining down upon the planet's atmosphere. Humanity would not be erased. In the heart of the battle, Cole led a boarding assault against the Council's command ship. He and his squad breached the enemy vessel, moving through its corridors like vengeful ghosts. The aliens fought with desperation, but one by one, they fell. Cole reached the ship's bridge and leveled his rifle at the commanding officer. The alien's 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. "You should not have pushed us," Cole said coldly. Then he pulled the trigger. Hours later, the last Council ship in the sector was destroyed. New Horizon had survived. Humanity had once again turned the tide. But Cole knew this was only the beginning. The Council had played their final card. Now it was humanity's turn to respond. And when they did, there would be nothing left of the Galactic Council but dust. The galaxy trembled as humanity unleashed its wrath. The Galactic Council's desperation had led them to commit the ultimate crime, attempted genocide against humanity's colonies. But their plan had failed. New Horizons still stood. Millions of human lives had been saved, and in return, the Council's forces had been utterly annihilated. Now, there would be no more mercy. On the bridge of the UTS Valkyrie, General Adrian Cole stood in grim silence, staring at the holographic map of the Council's remaining strongholds. The enemy had pulled back, retreating into their inner territories. They were running scared. Captain Rice watched him carefully. "They thought they could break us," she said. "Instead, they've given us the perfect excuse to finish this war." Cole nodded. "And we will." The order was simple. No more waiting. No more defensive battles. Humanity would strike directly at the heart of the enemy. The first target was the massive shipyard orbiting Vortalis Prime. The station was one of the Council's largest manufacturing hubs, producing warships, weapons, and supplies for their fleets. Without it, the Council's ability to fight would collapse. The attack was swift and brutal. Human stealth ships infiltrated the shipyard's perimeter, disabling key systems before the main assault even began. When the UTS Valkyrie and its fleet arrived, the enemy's defenses were already in chaos. The battle was over in less than an hour. Council engineers and soldiers scrambled to fight back, but they were no match for the relentless precision of humanity's forces. Explosions tore through the facility, fires raging across its surface. One by one, the enemy warships docked at the station were obliterated. Cole stood on the bridge, watching as the Council's mighty shipyard burned. "They took our worlds," he muttered. "We take everything from them." News of the attack sent shockwaves across the galaxy. On Vortalis Prime, High Chancellor Guyland listened to the reports with growing horror. "The shipyard is lost," an aide stammered. "Our forces were completely overrun." Xyland's claws dug into the armrests of his throne. "No, this isn't possible." He turned to Admiral Korak. "Where are our reinforcements? Where is our counterattack?" The Admiral's reptilian face was tense. Our fleets are scattered. The humans are striking too fast. Every time we try to regroup, they destroy another key facility. Xylan slammed his fist against the table. Then gather our forces at Vortalis Prime. We will make our stand here. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The Council was losing. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. Now they were coming to end this war once and for all. Humanity's next target was the Council's primary weapons facility on the frozen world of Sifos 9. For decades, this facility had been the birthplace of the Council's most advanced weaponry. Now, it would be reduced to rubble. As the human fleet arrived, Council defenders prepared for a last stand. They had fortified the planet with defensive turrets, ground forces, and shielded bunkers. They believed they could hold the line. They were wrong. Orbital bombardments hammered the enemy positions, shattering their defenses before the ground assault even began. Human dropships descended onto the battlefield, deploying heavily armed soldiers equipped with cutting-edge armor and weaponry. The fighting was brutal. Council soldiers fought with desperation, knowing there was no retreat. But humanity's forces were relentless, moving with precision and efficiency. Within hours, the facility was in flames. Cole stood amidst the ruins, watching as the last remaining Council officers were taken prisoner. He knew what had to come next. Vortalis Prime, the Council's homeworld. It was time to end this war. As humanity's fleet gathered for the final battle, the galaxy watched in silence. The once mighty Galactic Council, rulers of countless worlds, had been reduced to a cornered beast. Their fleets were shattered, their defenses crumbling. And now, Earth's forces were coming to finish them. The war was nearly over. But before the final strike, humanity would make sure the entire galaxy understood one thing. This was the price of pushing them too far. Vortalis Prime loomed in the distance, its surface covered in vast, glittering cities, once symbols of the Galactic Council's power, now nothing more than a dying empire's last hope. Humanity's fleet had arrived. On the bridge of the UTS Valkyrie, General Adrian Cole stood before the holographic display, watching as wave after wave of human warships emerged from slip space. They had come in full force, battle cruisers, dreadnoughts, carrier ships deploying thousands of fighters. This was not a raid. This was the final assault. Captain Rice took a deep breath. They know we're here. Cole nodded. Good. Let them feel the fear we felt when they tried to wipe us out. The Council had thrown everything into defending their homeworld. Their last remaining fleets were in formation, massive battleships aligned in tight ranks, planetary shields at full power. Ground-based defense cannons tracked every movement in orbit. The Council had always believed their capital was untouchable, but nothing was untouchable anymore. Cole turned to the comms officer. Send the message. A transmission was broadcasted across every frequency, reaching the ears of every Council leader, every soldier, and every civilian still clinging to the hope that they could survive this day. This is General Adrian Cole of the United Terran Forces. His voice echoed across the stars. You have one chance. Surrender now, and we will allow your civilians to live. But if you resist, his voice darkened, we will reduce your world to ash. The Council's leaders listened in horror. Inside the war chamber of Vortalis Prime, High Chancellor Xylan's claws trembled as he clenched the edges of the command table. Around him, his advisors were in chaos, some screaming for a last stand, others pleading to surrender. They've come to destroy us, Admiral Korak growled. We must fight to the end. Xylan's 4 eyes darted to the holographic battlefield. Humanity's fleet was larger than he had ever imagined. Their warships bristled with weapons, their formations precise and disciplined. He had always believed the Council's military was the strongest force in the galaxy. Now he saw the truth. Humanity had surpassed them, and they had every reason to seek vengeance. But surrender was impossible. The Council's laws were absolute. No High Chancellor had ever bowed to another species. To do so would be to destroy everything they had built. Xylan straightened. "We will fight." The order was given. The battle began with fire. The Council's fleets opened fire first, unleashing massive energy volleys that illuminated the void. Plasma cannons, railgun rounds, missile swarms. Every weapon they had was thrown at the approaching human armada. But Earth's forces were ready. Admiral Ayako Kasai commanded the counteroffensive. "All units, advance. Break their formation." The Valkyrie led the charge, its cannons roaring as it returned fire. Human warships weaved through the chaos, dodging enemy bombardments while delivering precise, devastating blows. Fighters swarmed through the battlefield, engaging enemy ships in deadly dogfights. Then, the dreadnoughts fired. Massive railguns, capable of shattering asteroids, sent hypervelocity rounds tearing through the enemy's largest warships. Entire sections of the Council's fleet disintegrated in fire and debris. The Council's defenses began to crumble. On the surface, planetary cannons tried desperately to hold off the inevitable, but humanity had already anticipated them. Stealth bombers, cloaked and undetected, bypassed the planetary shields and struck deep into the heart of Vortalis Prime's defense grid. Explosions erupted across the capital city as key installations were obliterated. The Council's last hope was slipping away. General Cole led the ground invasion himself. Humanity's forces landed in waves, drop ships streaking through the atmosphere as shock troopers stormed the capital. The once proud cities of Vortalis Prime became battlegrounds. The Council's elite guards fought savagely, but they were no match for the sheer fury of humanity's soldiers. Street by street, building by building, the city fell. Cole's squad pushed toward the Council's war chamber, where Hylan and his leaders had barricaded themselves. The heavy doors were reinforced, designed to withstand orbital bombardments. But they weren't designed to withstand humanity's determination. A breaching charge was set. The explosion ripped through the chamber doors, sending shockwaves through the grand hall where the Council had once ruled over the galaxy. Cole stepped inside, his rifle aimed. His soldiers fanned out behind him, securing the room. Xylan stood at the center, his regal robes stained with dust and sweat. His advisors cowered behind him, some trembling, others too frozen with fear to move. Cole's eyes locked onto the High Chancellor. Xylan straightened, trying to maintain what little dignity he had left. You wouldn't dare execute a ruling government," he stammered. "That would make you no better than us." Cole's expression was unreadable. "We don't need to execute you." Xylan frowned. "What?" The general stepped closer, lowering his rifle slightly. "Your government is already dead." It was true. Even as they spoke, news was spreading across the galaxy. The Council's fleets were shattered. Their strongholds were gone. Their capital was under human control. They had lost. And without their military, without their rule of fear, the Galactic Council was nothing. Xylan's body sagged, the last trace of defiance leaving him. "It's over," Cole said. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was free from the Council's tyranny. Humanity had been pushed to the edge. And now they had struck back with vengeance. The fires of war still burned across Vortalis Prime. Smoke choked the sky, and the once mighty capital of the Galactic Council lay in ruins. Humanity had won. The Council had fallen. But the war was not over. General Adrian Cole stood on the balcony of the former High Chancellor's palace, overlooking the shattered city. The sight was grim. Collapsed towers, streets littered with debris, and the flickering remnants of Council banners now trampled under human boots. Behind him, Captain Rice approached. "Scouts report that some Council remnants are still resisting in the outer districts," she said. "They refuse to surrender." Cole didn't look away from the ruins. "Then we give them a choice," he said coldly. "Surrender or be wiped out." Rice hesitated. "Sir, do you think we should be the ones to decide their fate?" Cole turned to her, his expression hard. "They decided ours when they tried to exterminate us. This isn't about revenge anymore, Captain. This is about ensuring they never get another chance to do it again. Across the planet, battles still rage. Pockets of Council forces, loyal to the old regime, had fortified themselves in underground bunkers and military districts. They had nothing left to lose, and that made them dangerous. Humanity's forces moved swiftly, executing precision strikes to root out the remaining resistance. In the shattered district of Koranis, a council commander named Varlek made his final stand. His soldiers, once proud warriors of the Empire, now fought with desperation. They had barricaded the streets, set up defense turrets, and vowed to die before letting humans take their last stronghold. But humanity was relentless. Drones swarmed ahead, mapping enemy positions. Sniper teams took out key officers. A squad of power-armored soldiers led the final charge, breaking through the defenses like an unstoppable force. Varlek fought until his last breath. When his body fell, his soldiers finally surrendered. The last stronghold of the Council had fallen. In the heart of the capital, humanity prepared for the next step. Inside the Council's former war chamber, Adrian Cole stood at the head of a massive war table, surrounded by the leaders of Earth's forces. The banners of the fallen Council had been torn down, replaced with the insignia of the United Terran Federation. Across from Cole sat High Chancellor Xylan, bound in restraints. He had been spared for now. "This war doesn't end here," Cole said, addressing the room. "The Council may be gone, but their influence still lingers. Governors, warlords, and admirals who once served them will try to reclaim their power. If we leave now, they'll rebuild." Reyes crossed her arms. "So what's the plan? Occupation?" "No." Cole looked at Xylan, then back at his officers. "We don't need to rule over them. We need to make sure they never rule over us again." He activated a holographic display, showing key locations across the galaxy. Council-controlled supply lines, hidden weapon caches, remaining fleets scattered across the stars. "We hit them before they have a chance to regroup," Cole continued. "We dismantle what's left of their war machine. And when we're done, we make sure no species ever dares to push humanity to the edge again." Xylan finally spoke, his voice bitter. "You think destroying us will bring you peace. There will always be another threat. Another war." Cole's gaze was ice-cold. "Then we'll be ready." The war was nearly over, but humanity's work had just begun. Across the stars, human fleets mobilized for the final phase. The Council had ruled with fear for centuries. Now, the galaxy would learn a new truth. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, and from now on, they would decide where the edge was.